Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Huge speculation going around today as to exactly which driver Red Bull are targeting to replace Sergio Perez on a longer term basis when his time at the team is over. Daniel Ricciardo is the obvious short term replacement. Could it be Lando Norris in the medium term as some have described, or possibly a return of Carlos Sainz to the Red Bull outfit? Rumours going around today that could well be possible. Would that be good for both parties? Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, here to mention then the Autosport Awards that went down yesterday. This is Toto and CC Wolf, of course. They've been in a bit of controversy over the last few days. If you guys saw the video we put out 2 days ago on interesting allegations regarding Toto Wolff, but also loads of awards, of course, for the season coming through. Lots of this is Formula 1 based a lot of the time, that people think, oh, this driver should have won it from this motorsport series, but a lot of what you see is Formula 1 based, and probably understandably so. Piastri won Rookie of the Year for 2023. Congratulations to him. Even Christian Horner won an award, the John Bolster Award for Technical Excellence. Previous winners Roger Penske, Ross Brawn, Toto Wolff, Adrian Newey, Patrick Head, for example. So congrats to Horner, and plenty of other awards going down. Red Bull, as expected, did rather well here. Their car, the legendary RB19, 21 of 22 races won this season, won the Car of the Year competition. Max Verstappen, of course, won the International Racing Driver of the Year award as well. So, you know, lots of these are basically no-brainers. I don't imagine there was much decision-making required. Silverstone won the Staging, like Promoter of the Year, basically, for the British Grand Prix. And there was also, as usually is the case, a bit of a drama with regard to the British Competition Driver of the Year. So Lando Norris won it this time, and people always say, oh, well, you know, should someone else have won it? Now, Norris has won this a lot over the last few years. For example, back in last year, Hamilton won it in 2022, which is, you know, very interesting. And, of course, didn't win the championship that year, but he did win the championship in, well, most of the previous seasons, when Norris won it in 19, 20, and 21. Now, I'm pretty sure that Hamilton won international driver on, you know, some of these occasions, and therefore he wasn't kind of eligible to win the British one as well, I guess is why Norris won it in 2020. But still, people are like, well, you know, is this really a serious award? Do these things really matter? Maybe not, but nonetheless pretty interesting. So I guess congrats to all the winners. Now, bit of drama as well in the Formula 2 side from Jack Doohan. He's an Alpine driver. He's been in Formula 2 now and will not be doing, he's been I think 2 years, will not be doing a third season, as apparently there is little value in a third season in this category, which might be true. Then again, did Teo Porcher not just win F2 in his third season? So there's a debate to be had on that. But right now he doesn't have anything to race, and this is what is frustrating about the Formula 2 drivers. A lot of the time, even the likes of Teo Porcher, your prize for winning Formula 2 will be to probably sit behind the team with a headset on for the entire season or not drive any cars. Be their reserve driver, sure, be their test driver or whatever, sure, but not really do much racing. And there isn't, I mean, this year there's literally no rookies on the grid, which is the first time that's ever happened for the upcoming 2024 season. Doohan will not be one of them. You know, is he good enough to be undeniable level talent, such that Alpine are going to have to put him in at some point? I'm not so sure, but he's had offers from other motorsport series, and this is, you know, it's interesting, the likes of Callum Ilott and stuff like that are around a few years ago, like, they've gone off to do IndyCar, and Jack Doohan says that, you know, he's had opportunities, Super Formula, IndyCar, Hypercar. I was very fortunate to have those options. So, you know, to get an IndyCar seat offer and to turn it down is quite the decision. I mean, look, I get it from Doohan's point of view that he wants to focus on Formula 1 as part of Alpine and everything like this, but you know, it's Alpine at the end of the day. And also, it's, you know, you're going to sit behind the team with a headset on for the most of the season. I don't know if I was Doohan whether I would have done this. I think I probably would have taken the IndyCar seat, to be honest. But his intention is to get into Formula 1, and he feels like that this is his best chance to just potentially not drive. But yeah, I just think that doing any years outside of actually doing racing maybe just does you more harm than good. Like, if he goes to IndyCar and kills it, then he could come back to Formula 1. But maybe that's not going to happen right now. But plenty of big rumours around the future of Ferrari and their driver lineup going forwards. There were lots of talking points today that effectively Ferrari have agreed with Leclerc that he will be basically the number one, and the decisions they make in terms of car direction and setup, let's say his feedback will have significantly greater weight than the feedback of his teammate. This is clearly Vasseurs' plan at Ferrari, and that seemingly involves a new 5-year extension with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc until 2029 is the rumour, with potentially €50 million salary on a yearly basis. Pretty mega stuff. We talked about it yesterday. Potential exit clause on performance after 2027, so we'll see how that goes. And there's also talk about potentially Carlos Sainz. Now, they want to keep Sainz around for the time being, and Sainz wants to stay, but it feels like there might be some sort of compromise. And I mean, look, we looked at this image yesterday from the Italian press, the Gazzetta, making it very clear that Charles Leclerc is the king at Ferrari. He's the number one guy, and that Carlos Sainz does not like being the number two. We've known that's very clear for, Carlos Sainz's entire career, basically. And this is what Gazzetta went on to say. This reads kind of like speculation rather than they know something concrete, but it's worthy of discussing regardless, because they did talk about it. It is precisely the McLaren that could be the future destination for Sainz, for whom a place at Red Bull could also open up in the event of Sergio Perez's departure. So this is the question really as to what Red Bull are thinking in regard to their Perez replacement. We obviously know that next season it's pretty likely, I would say, based on the supposed clause in Ricciardo's contract which will allow him to replace Perez at Red Bull as and when the time comes, that Ricciardo comes into the seat. I wouldn't be surprised. But is Ricciardo for Red Bull, because he's been around many years at this point. Sure, he's got maybe a good few years left in him, but, is he really their ideal target? He is 34 now, Ricciardo, and, Red Bull would be wise to consider alternatives to partner Max Verstappen. Now, at the same time, you don't want somebody necessarily, if you're Red Bull, that might be too competitive with Max Verstappen. The ideal is that Perez can basically do what Bottas did at Mercedes and do a respectable job, win the occasional race, out-qualify Max on occasion if it was, the same story as what we saw with Bottas at Mercedes, and comfortably do enough to win the Constructors' Championship by supporting his world champion teammate. But at Red Bull, they tend to have maybe a bit of a harder time achieving that for various reasons. Perez, of course, this season struggled quite significantly, and now there's rumours that potentially Sainz to Red Bull could be a possibility as well. We know that Sainz has been at Red Bull in the past, and, the door might be open to him to return to the Red Bull family as and when the time comes, as you guys can see here, when they were, back in the Toro Rosso days. Verstappen and Sainz as teammates back then. So we've seen Verstappen and Sainz team before. We've seen Verstappen and Ricciardo team before. Obviously, Perez is there now, and his contract runs until the end of 2024, but you could well imagine that it's either going to end then, like I don't expect Perez to be coming back for a fifth season at Red Bull, or he's going to go mid-season, as has been some of the recent rumours. Ricciardo, sure, he can do a solid job, I think, in that team, but will he be the ideal candidate? Like, okay, Horner loves him, but what does Helmut Marko think? What do Red Bull think? Do they perceive that to be, the ideal setup? Maybe not. And they will look at Hamilton Russell. They will look at, Leclerc Sainz, but potentially Leclerc Albon or something in the near future of those other teams, and think, maybe Red Bull's outfit needs to be upgraded from Perez and potentially from Ricciardo, because, he's good, but has he massively impressed since he's returned from his break? I wouldn't say so for sure. I mean, he's been out-qualified by Tsunoda on average. Yes, he had that phenomenal performance in Mexico, but, didn't really deliver that much in Abu Dhabi. They could possibly be looking at a Carlos Sainz return. This was also a picture that was taken, I think, back in maybe July sometime of, Marko and Sainz having a bit of a chat. So there was some talk about, even mid-season, there was talk about potentially Sainz returning to the Red Bull family, and even Helmut Marko had a few, spicy words to say on Ferrari at the time, and basically said that it's not Sainz's fault that Ferrari are doing badly. They need to make other more significant changes. Now, it must be said, why would Red Bull do this exactly? I'm not so convinced as to why. It's the same reason as to, do you want to bring Norris into the team when Norris, will want to be there to win world championships at your outfit? He will want to challenge Max Verstappen, and things could get pretty toxic. Yes, they're friends or whatever, but, give it time, give it a title fight. We've seen these things happen in the past. And Sainz at Red Bull, when he was in the Red Bull program at Toro Rosso, it wasn't exactly all smooth sailing, right? There was, lots of conflict going on there behind the scenes. There was lots of talk about Sainz's father getting involved and everything like this. And, there's been talk in the past from Red Bull and Marko. And sure, Marko might not be at that team for too much longer, so maybe his opinion doesn't matter in the next 2 to 3 years. But let's be honest, I think that Sainz at Red Bull would potentially be a recipe for some toxicity to develop, because Sainz is a good driver. Is he a great driver like a Verstappen or, in my opinion, like a Leclerc? I don't think so, but he's good enough to win races and to be competitive, and he's very clearly not happy being a number 2. And, okay, would Sainz agree to join Red Bull if he no longer has a seat at Ferrari? I mean, sure, why not? Why not drive the best car, one of the best cars, when your other option might be Audi or something come 2026, and it's not clear if they're going to be any good, or even if they're going to be on the grid, because there's rumours about potentially Audi pulling out of their Formula 1 operations, going out at the moment. So, sure, if Sainz gets the call and says, yeah, we want you to join Red Bull instead of Perez or whatever in a couple of years, I don't think he's going to say no, but he will very clearly want to come into that team and make things... But he would very clearly want to come into that team and make an impression and not just sit there and be, the runner-up to Max Verstappen on all the occasions. We've seen what he said back in, let's say, Silverstone 2022 when he did eventually win the race, stop inventing on the radio. And things haven't got that toxic between Sainz and Leclerc at Ferrari. I think that if they were in a title fight together, I think it would be. I mean, we've seen occasions like Monza this year when things were very much over the line, I think, from Sainz at times, and arguably from Leclerc as well, and I just can't see a world in which he goes to Red Bull and it's all sunshine and rainbows. So I don't know why Red Bull would do this necessarily, and if you are going to bring in a driver that has potential conflict with Verstappen, then why not just get Norris, who's probably better, you know what I mean? So I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on that, but the rumour has it that Sainz wants a 2-year extension with Ferrari. Ferrari, though, say, we can give you 1 year, and they will apparently work to reach a compromise. I mean, compromise is kind of funny because you can't do 1.5 years, you know what I mean? Like, it's either 1 year or it's either 1 year or it's 2 years. So those are kind of your options there, but I guess they're going to try and find a compromise on other factors, I suppose. The rumour is that Sainz will probably stay until 2025, and then after that they might get somebody else in for the advent of the new regulations. But if Sainz is gone come 2026, he's going to be looking for an alternative, and depending on how Ricciardo, let's say, does in the Red Bull seat, as we might predict him to be there, that might make some inroads. But I think regardless of who their long-term target is, Perez won't be around too much longer. Like, as I said, I don't expect him to get a 5th season at Red Bull. This is going into his 4th year. He even did an interesting interview lately where, I mean, this was the title of it. Now, he was really talking here about, I think it was after Qatar, where he'd had a terrible weekend. He basically said, like, I can't be this bad. Something's gone wrong. And then he did all the simulator work, and he did start to put it together a little bit more at the end of the season. But obviously a pretty funny quote to lead with right from Perez. But definitely struggled. I mean, if you look at the average race pace numbers this season, you're looking at something like this, when Max Verstappen, of course, is the goalposts. Sergio Perez, 4.5 tenths back in race pace on average. So, of course, everyone that's not leading, the fact that Verstappen led 1,000+ laps this year, everyone else has at some point spent part of the season in traffic or fighting through, as Perez has done many a time. So there's always a bit of a, you've got to consider that as a factor in play as to why some of these race pace figures are a bit lower, just because, sometimes the cars and the drivers were faster, but they couldn't unleash all of that pace. So Perez was 2nd fastest here to Verstappen on average race pace in the season. Hamilton was 3rd, then Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso, Norris, Russell, all pretty tightly grouped. Then you get back to the Alpines. Gasly, of course, Ocon further back, Piastri, Stroll in the mix as well. Of course, fair play to Piastri because plenty of races he didn't have the updates that a Norris had on the car. And Ricciardo looks pretty good here relative to Tsunoda, but I guess you've got to consider that Ricciardo was in the car generally at the end of the year when the car was a bit better. But still, I like Ricciardo. I think he can be good, but I'm just not sure that he's going to be the long-term man for, Red Bull to consider. But I also don't really see why it should be Sainz. Speaking of Alpine, just before we close out the video here, Pierre Gasly said, I honestly can't believe Alpine are a real team. Like, these guys cannot be serious, I swear. But to be fair, Gasly and Ocon both somehow, it was Ocon in Monaco and it was Gasly in Zandvoort, wasn't it? They got podiums this year, which is still kind of wild that they, both had podiums this season. But, as they say, the goal I'm working towards, I really hope we can hear the French anthem on the podium. The target is winning races for next year. So Alpine, they always give us their 5-year target, their 3-year target, or whatever, their 1-year target. And it's always like, oh yeah, we're going to win races, we're going to win the championship, and then we're going to be killing it. It's a French Ferrari, baby, because they were, 4th the previous season, now they were 6th this year, so it ain't looking so good for them. And just the final thing to mention for you guys, a very frustrating update, it's got to be said, from the FIA, and almost an admission that the 2022 regulations have effectively failed, I would say, in what they were intended to achieve. So 2022, the big intention was to improve the racing. Of course, they also said, oh, different teams are going to win every week, and it's going to be much better racing, which, sure, there was better racing at the start of 2022. The problem is, for various reasons, over the last couple of seasons, teams have found various loopholes to increase the outwash effect from the car. This is what generates more downforce. The teams love increasing outwash, but it's one of the main culprits for dirty air, and the reason why it's so hard to follow behind another car, and the reason why your tyres massively overheat and therefore massively degrade with these Pirelli compounds when you're following another car, and outwash is one of the key reasons why. We know that in 2026, the cars have been designed. What we saw a couple of weeks ago maybe, the front wing, the rear wing have been designed to basically eliminate outwash entirely. But the teams have, in 2022, that was also one of the big intentions. But the teams have found ways over the last couple of seasons to still add outwash in. And we now get cars that look like this, such as the AlphaTauri, when, you know, this rear wing is not looking that dissimilar to what we used to have when the end plates used to be allowed. Very sharp edges and very worked up air, shall we say, for the car behind to try and generate downforce from. And it didn't used to look like this at the start of 2022. These are the shapes we're now having on the cars, and the FIA were asked, like, look guys, are you going to close these loopholes? Are you going to try and change things on, especially the front and rear wings, to try and get back to what the intention of the regulations were when the outwash effect wasn't as significant and there was much less dirty air? The FIA say, no, we're not actually going to bother with that. We're going to wait until 2026. So, it's not even concerns that this is hurting the racing. It's been proven by the data that the car behinds, let's say 2021, if you're following a car length behind, you would lose half of your downforce. At the start of 2022, you were losing 20%, with much, much better. Now they're losing 35%, and you would expect next year that to be maybe 40%. So, the intention of the regulations to improve the racing has really not worked, and now that they know it hasn't worked, for whatever reason, they're saying, yeah, actually, we're not going to make changes to the regulations yet. We're just going to wait until 2026, and then we can actually do what we tried to do 4 years ago. I guess is kind of where we are now. So it's frustrating for someone that wants to see better quality racing and saw some great on-track action at the start of 2022, which has slowly diminished over the last couple of years. So very much interested in your thoughts, though, in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.